Hello and welcome back to our video series about how to help students reach their maximum potential. So in this session, we're going to start by looking at the safety needs, which is the next need up from the physiological ones. So what do we mean about when we say feeling safe? So we're talking about feeling safe from physical harm, from mental harm, so things like bullying and mental anguish, safe from sexual harm, safe from neglect. So that's knowing that those physiological needs are going to be met. So you kind of get your food, your water, your shelter, and your clothing and everything else, and also this idea of feeling safe as well. So what happens when we don't feel safe? So if we don't feel safe, our body reverts back to its fight, flight, or freeze response. This is kind of like the oldest response we have. It's the response which kept us alive um, when we were evolving back in the day. So if we saw a predator, we'd either get ready to fight it, we would run away, or we'd freeze in the time and hopefully it didn't see us. Okay. Now, this response cuts off, you get chemicals released into your body, and it cuts off any higher order thinking you can do. So that's a kind of your learning side and also your reasoning side, because it doesn't want your body doesn't need that. What it needs to do is kind of fight, run, or freeze. That's what it's getting ready to do. And what happens when this happens is, as we said, we can't think and we might act illogically, and this is when anger takes over and things like that. Okay. Now, moving forward, if we don't feel safe as well, people find excuses not to attend into school or into workplace or anywhere really. Um, and also, you find that prolonged exposure to stress and feeling safe, if you don't feel safe, that causes a lot of stress, can cause trauma as well as single traumatic events. So trauma is actually your brain physically changes due to your body having too much stress that it can't actually cope with. And people who've suffered trauma have a heightened fight or freeze response. They become what we call hypervigilant. So they're always looking around for where that next threat's coming from. And this is all these things are all things that happen when we don't feel particularly safe. So what makes people feel safe? Here's a few things. So consistency. People like to know what's going to happen, and they like it to be the kind of same response each time. Expected behaviors make people feel safe. If they think if I do this, this person's going to react in this way, and they do that, that builds this idea of safety because it's what you expect to happen. If they do something that you weren't expecting, that doesn't make you feel safe because it's really unexpected. Having a sense of belonging somewhere makes you feel safe. Having clear rules and routines makes you feel safe as well because you know what you're aiming for, you know how to behave and act in a certain situation. And also just having general calmness around you without having lots of loud, scary noises or anything or chaos also makes you feel safe. So consistency, what we mean by that? Well, it's kind of having the same response each and every time. So if you have a consistently positive and calm response to all situations, whether they're positive or negative, okay, that builds trust. It enables everybody to feel open and brave. And when I say open and brave, I mean that they'll tell you what's going on and they'll share those embarrassing things which they might not share otherwise. And it also builds the esteem of everybody. So it builds a self-esteem. So they start viewing themselves in a more positive way. If you're consistently negative, it it can be quite scary. It kind of breaks that esteem cycle, and it can lead to people being secretive. However, it is a consistent thing. So if someone knows that you're going to be consistently negative, it can make them feel a little bit safer, possibly. But all those other negative effects kind of negate that. However, what you don't want is to be really inconsistent. So sometimes really positive, sometimes really negative, because that's like this one-armed bandit idea that something happens and then person's waiting for you to pull that one-armed bandit and they don't know what the response is going to be. That puts people on edge and makes people feel really unsafe and a little bit scared. So what you're trying to do is, as much as possible, that consistently positive and calm response to things will make everybody feel a little safer. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about expectation and behavior, expected behaviors. So, I want you imagine that you're going into a pizza shop. What kind of things do you expect to see and hear and smell if you go into a pizza shop? Well, you expect to see people sat down having a meal, maybe some people ordering, and maybe some waiters and waitresses walking around, taking orders and delivering food. You probably expect to smell pizza cooking. In quite a lot of pizza places, you expect to see the kind of ovens behind at the back of the pizza shop there, where you can actually see them cooking it. You expect to smell the pizzas, you expect to have that aroma of the cheese melting and everything else in the air. And all those kind of things make you go into that pizza shop and think, actually, this is a good pizza shop. I feel safe here because it's what I expected to happen. Now, what would happen if you went into that pizza shop and they said, sorry, we've just decided on a whim today that we're not selling pizzas today. All we're going to sell is shellfish. Now, you're probably going, on a minute, this is a bit weird. It's a pizza shop. It's well known for pizza and it's shellfish, and that kind of unexpected behaviour there probably puts you on edge, and it'll probably make you feel a little bit less safe and a little bit less sure about that restaurant. In fact, some people will probably just straight up stand up and walk out because that's not what they were expecting. They were expecting to get pizza, and they're not going to get pizza anymore. So have a think about that, about how you respond to people, and that idea that in lots of situations there's an expected behaviour, um, and we can train those expected responses. And also have a think about if someone does something that you disagree with, how do you respond to that? And you build up an expectation of what your response is. So if your response is always calm and positive, then the expectation is that your response is going to be calm and positive. And again, that builds that trust and it builds that safety between and the bond between you and that person. So belonging. So if you feel loved and like you belong, you kind of feel safe in the situation you're in. You have a safer kind of bedrock to be able to take risks elsewhere in your life when you need to. Okay, and this can lead to much better learning. So what I'm saying here is that if students feel that they belong at the school and have that sense that they belong at the school, not only do they feel safer at the school, but also they take more risks in their learning and therefore will learn more and gain more from each learning episode, and that's really important. Now, building belonging can be as much as kind words spoken, not necessarily about the learning or work, but just in passing compliments on to people, letting them know that it doesn't matter how they've behaved in the past or what they've done in the past. At the moment, they're welcome and they're always going to be welcome going forward. These kind of things build that sense of belonging within someone, that they belong in a situation, and then they will start to do better in that situation. So clear rules and routines are, we've had rules and routines everywhere in our lives, but actually it's been really interesting recently with the whole COVID thing, where um, when people's routines have been disrupted, a lot of people have felt really unsafe and really unsure as to what they're meant to be doing, and that's made a lot of people feel very uneasy. So actually, it's just reinforced why these things are really important. So it enables everyone to know what is expected of them, so they can have that expected behaviour and make themselves and others feel safe. It creates a feel of kind of group safety when everybody's kind of following those rules and routines. It enables consistency to be built on how the rules are adhered to. So again, that word consistency and people knowing what's going on and knowing that the response is going to be the same, it makes them feel better and makes them feel safe too. And as we said, a loss of routine can lead us to feeling unsafe and becoming unproductive in many ways. Because you're kind of constantly then searching for that safety to try and fill that gap. Okay, and I mentioned calmness. Now, if you think about it, shouting and physical presence, so if you're kind of getting all really close to somebody and trying to be physically intimidating, can create feelings of fear. And this then leads to that fight, flight, or freeze response, which inhibits the higher order thinking. So, just by raising your voice to someone, in fact, what you think as being a raised voice might be interpreted by somebody else as you shouting at them in quite an aggressive way, okay, especially if they've suffered trauma in the past. So it's really important that as much as possible you keep calm and you keep your response very measured. Calmness in all situations creates trust and allows for much better self-regulation and self-reflection from from everybody around, really. And also, just think about it this way: that children model their own responses based on the responses of the adults around them. So if you're showing, if as an adult you are showing children that no matter what happens, you're going to face that situation with calmness, then they're more likely to learn the fact that they face situations with calmness. If you're teaching that child that actually, whenever you're feeling stressed, you need to be loud and shout or be, you know, intimidating in another way or potentially aggressive, then that means that that child learns that that's the way that you respond to that situation. Just have a think about what message you're trying to pass on as well. So top tips. So these are my top tips for helping create that idea of safety. Firstly, create positive rules and routines. We know that these build the idea of consistency and they allow people to feel safe because they know what the expected behaviors are going to be, and they can adhere to them. Don't make them overly complicated. Simple positive rules and simple positive routines are really important. Treat all situations with calmness and compassion. Because as we've said, not only are you teaching everybody else around you how they should respond to situations, but also it helps release that, stop that fight, flight, or freeze response from kicking in, and it makes people feel safer, especially if you always do that and that consistency comes in, that they know they're always going to get a calm and compassionate response from you. It also means that they trust you a lot more and will talk to you about things that are worrying them, as opposed to bottling them up. Okay. And remember, at all times, let people around you know that they are loved and that they belong. And if you do these three things, this will mean that everyone feels safer around you. And it means that not only will they be able to learn better, but they'll probably react with you in a more positive way, and everyone will always leave your presence feeling better about themselves. Okay, and two last quotes, which I think sum up this idea about safety for me. Really, is the first one is the only person that you can control is you. So it doesn't matter what's going on around you, you can only control your reaction to that. And by you controlling your reaction to that, others will then control their own reactions to those situations. So just think about that. You can't stop anybody else from reacting in a certain way. You can only control what you do, and then they will model what they, they will pick up on what you're doing and model that as well. And secondly, just remember when the adults change, everything changes. Okay, so um, children won't change what they're doing if the adults don't. But if the adults change how they're doing things, then you'll find that the child will start changing how they do things as well going forward. When I'm talking about adults, I'm not just talking about parents, but I'm talking about all kind of older children and everything else who have a kind of that responsibility as someone that younger people look up to. So it's well worth remembering those two quotes as you're going through life. I do hope that you found this useful, and I do hope to speak to you soon on the next video, which will be about the next step of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, see you then. Bye, everyone.